So the Basilica of St. Anne is the second oldest continuously operating parish in the United States. So we were founded in 1701, second only to St. Augustine in Florida. It's basically the institution that has been around for the longest continuously operating. So there have been 8 St. Anne buildings throughout our history. Right now, we work out and worship out of the 8th in our church's history that dates to 1886. Technically, it varies depending on how you recount history. Some debate and some scholars will say this is the 7th building because there was a building that was just restored previously and was not a full new building. We just count it as the 8th. But the first St. Anne's happened when Cadillac came to found the city of Detroit, and he came with 50 artisans, 50 soldiers, and 2 priests. And he came and glided down and settled at was today Hart Plaza. And they started construction 2 days after arrival on a small little chapel that they dedicated to St. Anne. Now, this was for 2 reasons. St. Anne was the patron of New France, as it was referred to at the time, patron saint. And also it was July 26th, which is the feast day of St. Anne. So they dedicated the chapel to St. Anne, and that became our parish. So over the history of the parish, our records date back to 1704. The first thing we have, we don't maintain those on site, those are maintained at the archives, but the first records we have are the baptism of one of Cadillac's daughters. So there's just a great vast history here at the Basilica of St. Anne. So the building that we're in today dates to 1886. It is still a very large historic building. It is built in a neo-Gothic or Gothic revival style. So with that, you see the pointed arches, you see some buttresses, and it allows the building to be built much taller. So you're going up to an 85-foot ceiling in our building. And as well, you have just the kind of soaring cathedral style that you would almost see in Europe. When you look at the interior, the pointed arches and the point of this style was to draw the eye upward, and you wanted to think of God. So everything from the edges of the pews to the high altar, the stations of the cross, everything just kind of had this point upward, and it would bring your eye up to God, and it's supposed to remind you of heaven. Some things about the interior of the church that's interesting is if you go inside, there is a lot of stained glass windows. We have stained glass on every facade, basically like north, south, east, and west, which is rare for churches of our size. So a few things about that. One, in our main central window is the rose window. You will see a very prominent Star of David displayed. Most people think it's a little odd for a church, but really if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because Mary was Jewish, Jesus was Jewish, Anne was Jewish. So it's a nod to their Jewish heritage and their faith and where we get our Catholic faith today. I have mentioned our name, the Basilica of St. Anne, a number of times. That is because we were named a basilica this past year in 2020. A basilica comes from the Greek name for royal or regal house. A basilica, we are a minor basilica. There are 2 types of basilicas. There are major basilicas and minor basilicas. If you are at a major basilica, you will be in Rome. The 4 major basilicas are in Rome: St. Peter's, St. Paul outside the wall, St. Mary Major, and St. John Lateran. So not the first pastor of the Basilica of St. Anne, but the most well-known is Father Gabriel Richard. He's a very pious man, he's a very holy man, and very integral to the history of both the area and Michigan itself. So he was born in France, and he joined the Sulpician order. He was born in 1767. And he became a priest in the middle of the French Revolution. So what ended up happening was he had to flee because the church and the clergy were being severely persecuted. He actually ended up being ordained in secret, ended up fleeing and coming over to America. He went to Baltimore first because he thought he would teach in the seminary there, but there wasn't enough need for teachers, so they were sent out to the frontier. He was down in Caspia for a few years and then came up to Detroit. And so when he came up to Detroit, he was here to help Father Lesto. and he eventually became the pastor of the Basilica of St. Anne. Now, the relocation to this site from more downtown in 1886 happened for a number of reasons. One was a main issue that, kind of similar to what we have today, most people moved out of the downtown area, and they were either living on the east or west side of the city. And there was a lot of industry down in the downtown area. So someone was approached, they were approached to sell the building, and so they sold the building and relocated to what was in the Boonies, which is Mexican Town now. So we are located across the Ambassador Bridge and in the heart of, or right by Mexican Town. And so what's interesting is there has been a lot of great history over the years at the Basilica of St. Anne. The Basilica, as it is today, was slated to be closed in the 1970s due to a city plan. And the Mexican Town local population really rallied around and saved the Basilica. And they were named a historic center, so being listed on like kind of historic sites, so that kind of gave the Basilica some protection going forward. So today we are still an active parish. Even with COVID, we are surviving. We have a lot of hope for our area. Two things are ongoing still. One is we are in the silent phase of a capital campaign. This campaign is going to refurbish and redo parts of the church, but also give, the less sexy things like the boiler and update, redo the roof, make some just structural support and changes. So suffice it to say, we are in the midst of the silent phase of a $20 million campaign for capital campaign. Additionally, we have a lot of hope when Ford announced the changes to the train station and the campus and the complex that will be going in there. We are very much in the shadow of the train station. It's not that far away from us. So that was really revitalizing as well in terms of changing what the future can hold. We continue to be a huge site of pilgrimage for individuals who have a devotion to St. Anne. We are the site of the official shrine of St. Anne in the diocese, and Archbishop Vigneron has always been a huge supporter. He comes and preaches at our novena every year on St. Anne's Feast Day. And so we just hope for great things in the future. There was a guild that was announced. There was a guild that was formed this past year in the name of Father Gabriel Richard. A guild is basically a precursor to any potential cause for canonization. And it's just kind of a booster club for the life and name of that person, as well as kind of being a fundraiser to raise funds so that the cause can be potentially looked into. So that was announced last year. So those are very long processes. They take decades, but it is exciting that Father Gabriel Richard is buried here at the Basilica of St. Anne in our chapel. The Basilica of St. Anne has been around for a long time. It has a very important history. We are very much linked to the city of Detroit, and we have very good hope for things that will come in the future.